So kia ora, yes, welcome. So I propose to lead you through our experience of providing this particular type of feedback to the students. We embarked on this project, the audio feedback project last year, using Moodle, which at the Faculty of Education we ran as a learning management system alongside Cecil. And this year we've all been launched into Canvas. So we didn't know at the outset whether Canvas would provide the same have the same affordances for audio feedback as that we were used to in Moodle. When I say used to, we'd used it once. So we have used it. We've used it just recently, and so I'll lead you through. I'll do that at the end because that'll make you stay. I'll show you the click-by-click process in Canvas. It's really pretty straightforward. But in the lead up to that, I'll kind of explain some of the theoretical background behind quality feedback, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure you'll be riveted. So I work mostly in the grad diploma secondary teaching. I also work on the MTeach program, and I work in the Teach First program a little bit as well. So I work across the multiple pathways that we have into secondary teaching. My background is that I was 20 years a secondary school teacher in an urban state secondary school in Auckland, and this is my second job in the world. I've been at Epsom since for 15 years or so, teaching mostly grad dip secondary students. So the complicating factor for us, and I know you'll switch off at this point, the complicating factor for us is that we're not only teaching about teaching, we're teaching teachers who are going to be teachers themselves, and so it's a bit of almost like it risks disappearing into a black hole around itself. So we feel the need quite strongly to model good practice in as much as we possibly can, given the numbers. And we also need to kind of, in a way, to lead our own students through teaching and learning experiences that will help them understand the role that students play in their classroom. We see that as a kind of an obligation, really. So in the course of talking to students about what works in the classroom, we use the good Professor Hattie's research. People in secondary schools' eyes roll up at this point when we say John Hattie, because he's responsible for ASTEL. Hello, Susan. He's responsible for ASTEL, and ASTEL has been topped down into secondary schools, and teachers are, they respond the way people normally do to top-down initiatives. And there's some kind of controversy, some debate about the idea of whether you can attach a 2 decimal point strength to a classroom intervention, whether it's possible to quantify things to that extent, causality to that extent in education, and I don't get too fussed about that myself, but I do like the thinking behind trying to figure out what works in classrooms. So at the end of John Hattie's books, he always puts a list up of the factors which have an impact on achievement. And he says, so his work, if you're not familiar with it, is meta-analysis. So he looks at looks into the studies and tries to draw out what's effective and what's not. And so when they talk about millions of students, those are the numbers that are in the studies that he's looked at. And in some areas there are more studies for him to look at than in others. So he says that all classroom interventions have an impact. Everything we do has an impact. But given that we can't do everything, why don't we choose, shall we, to do the things that we can figure out that might be effective? So in the range, he ranks them in order, and they do have 2 decimal points attached to them. And the medium of effect size is 0.4. And seat of the pants, he says an effect size of 1.0 is about a year's acceleration in schooling. So 1 is of a very high order of magnitude. So 0.4 is acceleration. There are many effect sizes below that, and he says if in the order of things we understand that some things are less effective and we have a limited budget, why would we do those? Why would we focus on those? So these are some of the ones that I put in front of our graduates. So the highest student expectations has the highest effect size. That's self-efficacy, understanding what students can do, what they might do with the resources available. Teacher credibility has a very, as you might expect, whether the person at the front of the room has the confidence of the other people in the room, has a very big impact on student outcomes. But these are the ones that I wanted to put particularly in front of you. So formative evaluation and quality feedback have a profound effect on student progress in the classroom. And I suggest that the same thing applies in higher education as well, that actually formative evaluation and good and quality feedback are significant components of what we should be doing. Now, in a semesterized program and with hundreds of students and maybe a couple of different assessment points through the semester, the chance of providing good quality feedback that students will actually attend to in any significant way and incorporate our suggestions into their work in the future is a great challenge for us. And we could raise our hands around the room about how many of us have got a piece of work back in the past and read the mark and stuffed it quickly into the bottom of our bags, not going through and looking at all the notes written around the edges, or even the generic feedback at the bottom of the page. I think that we look at the mark and we move on. So our interest in audio feedback initially was to provide quality feedback, to provide a kind of a formative opportunity for students, because the particular assignment that we give the audio feedback on is in the first part of the first semester. It's after the first 5 or 6 weeks they submitted, I guess. And it kind of sets we feel that the part of the course that we teach, it kind of sets the tone for the rest of the academic year, really. And if we can establish some good practice and put them through a formative evaluative, it's formative and summative at the same time. But the audio feedback enables us to do more with the feedback than we could ordinarily do with just a plain mark sheet. And if you'll excuse me for just a moment, I'll just jump out of there and get a normal mark sheet up so that you can see what it is that we're talking about, and this might be familiar to you as well. So criterion-based assessment, so different criteria, tick, tick, tick. So we have the opportunity to put marks or highlight or do whatever it is alongside the page, and down the bottom here where you can't see it, but it's not really particularly important, there's a box that we can write in, and ordinarily that's how students would get feedback about their work. And what the difference is between exceptionally insightful and highly insightful, well, we could have a long conversation about that. But ultimately what we need is for the students to be confident that the assessments we're making are legitimate and valid. And I don't know, how do I return to that? I don't know that's always the case. Can you see it? Fantastic. That's always the case from a mark sheet, tick, 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 grade at the bottom of the page, and maybe a bit of generic feedback. And as I said, I've always had my doubts, based on personal experience, as to how much engagement there is with that written feedback. And having been a secondary school teacher for a very long time, and corrected quite a few apostrophes, I don't know that putting the apostrophe on the page and handing it back to the student. Anyway, so we were looking for an opportunity that would kind of create a better engagement between the students and our feedback. Nigel Latter. So we in the context of our course, we invite people along to talk to the students. Not all of them TV stars, but Nigel Latter was available on one occasion to come and talk to our students, and he was a very interesting fellow. He allowed us to film him. It's a satire, isn't it? I could be going around forever. He was talking about. He was very clear that he had no teaching experience, but as you might know, he was a clinical psychologist and worked in the context of schools quite a lot. And he knew that he was talking to student teachers, and he wanted to talk to them about things related to education that he had learnt by hovering on the margins, by seeing interactions between often quite difficult kids and their teachers, and things that he had learnt. And he was a very, very engaging fellow. Of course, you might have seen some of his stuff. But he talked a little bit about this particular topic here.
Right. So that's the moon. Now, let's move to the next thing, which is not an old piano. I've got a view of it. Anyway, now, along with research. So I know you've talked about Carol Dweck, but I'm also going to talk about Carol Dweck because I think she's friggin' marvellous. And I think she's marvellous because I think that whole stuff about mindset is really simple. It's really easy to grasp. And again, it's backed up by loads and loads of research. If you are a teacher or wanting to be a teacher and you haven't read this book, shame, 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 shame on you. It's also really interesting because you know how often you read books and they're really dull? Like, it's actually a really interesting book. So, as hopefully you know, Carol Dweck's thing is all about mindset. And what she basically discovered is that there are two approaches to learning, a fixed approach and a growth approach. So, people with a fixed approach to learning have this idea that talent and intelligence are fixed. You're smart or you're not. You're talented or you're not. And so you're either Tiger Woods or you're not. Because of that, you have an approach to life which says that there's no point in me working hard to learn something because I can't do it. I'm never going to be able to do it. It's not my thing. So you give up easily. You don't like challenges. You don't like feedback because feedback just reminds you you're not very good at stuff. And you don't like being around people who are good at things because that just reminds you that you're not very good at it. Growth mindset people think about the world a bit differently. They think that talent and intelligence aren't fixed, that these are things that can be developed. So it's not the case that you're either Tiger Woods or you're not, because Tiger Woods picked up a golf club at, I don't know, age 2 or age 3 or something. But unlike probably most other people who've picked up a golf club at that age, we put it down about 15 seconds later. He didn't. He kept going and practicing and practicing. He wasn't just born Tiger Woods. He practiced and did all this stuff. People like Mozart. You know, people, oh, Mozart, he was a genius. He was great when he was 5. I don't know, but I've read stuff that said most of his early stuff, age 5, was a bit rubbish. It wasn't really until he got much older that he did his really good stuff. Bill Gates, he didn't just drop out of university and become Bill Gates and create. He didn't go to university and go, oh, blimey, there's a computer, that's great. I'll go and make Microsoft. His whole adolescence, his mum worked in some business where the boss would let Bill and his friends come in after hours and weekends and practice coding at work. So whilst most other kids were gooning around and getting drunk and all that kind of stuff, he was coding. So he said by the time he got to university and dropped out to go and make Microsoft, he'd put in like 20,000 hours worth of coding practice. You just don't get good at something without a lot of practice. So growth mindset people think that that intelligence and talent are things that you can learn and develop. So because of that, they don't mind putting in lots of work, people like Bill Gates, because they understand that if you can't do something, effort leads to mastery over that thing. So they like challenges because challenges mean you actually learn something new. They like feedback, and mostly they don't like positive feedback because positive feedback's a bit dull. Oh, you're great, you're wonderful. What you really want to know if you've got a growth mindset is what am I not doing well and what can I do better? And they like being around people who are really good at stuff because people who are really good at things can teach you how to be better at it because what they're doing is just a skill. It's just stuff that you can develop and pick up.
And we'll pause Nigel there. And in talking about teaching and learning, this is one of the slides from one of the PowerPoints that we used. So what we're wanting our students and our students to adopt much more is a growth mindset. If the parts of the New Zealand curriculum that talk about lifelong learning and all of those things are to be taken to our hearts, then we want people that embrace challenges. We want them to persist in the face of setbacks. We want them to learn from criticism, and because we want them to continue to develop. And it feels to me like in many summative assessment opportunities, you know, there's a line or a bar and you're there or you're what we're trying to do with our students is to encourage them to be on this side of the chart over here, that yes, you didn't do this particular assignment very well, but if you were to attend to these following things in the future, which will only be in this academic year, because the following year they'll be teaching, as well, most of them will be doing, then your work can improve. You're demonstrating these skills, but we want, if you were to add this skill set in, then things would be better for you. So there's kind of the aspect of providing them with feedback that'll improve their performance, but kind of modelling for them the kinds of things that we hope they'll be able to do in their own classroom, is to get kids to learn from criticism rather than to shun negative feedback because they just feel bad about themselves. And I don't know when it was when you went to school, but certainly that was my experience of school. It was success or failure. It was pass or not pass. It was good or bad. And there didn't seem to be any particular focus on developing the skills required to get better. It felt like at every opportunity everything was summative. So although strictly speaking, the opportunity that we're using this feedback in is a summative experience, we're hoping that we're able to provide formative information at the same time. And this is another piece of work that we use in the context of teaching students, and this one's about motivation and engagement. And it relates to the groups of students who are not the main block, the main body of students, the people on the margins, minoritized groups who you might know are more vulnerable to early departure. This is in tertiary ed. So I'll just lead you through relatively quickly through these. So of course, obviously, research done in the American context. 3 different types of feedback: critical feedback of the performance with no other comment, the same critical feedback but with general praise of overall performance, and the same critical feedback but with an explicit mention of high standards and assurance of the student's ability to meet those standards. So the unbuffered criticism said, your letter needs work. In addition to routine editorial, most of my comments centre on how you could breathe more life. As it stands, your letter is vague and rambling, long on adjectives and short on specific illustrations. And who amongst us hasn't received feedback like that? Overall, nice job. Your enthusiasm for your teacher really shows through, and it's clear that you must have valued it. You have some interesting ideas and make some good points. In the pages that follow, I've provided some specific feedback and suggested several areas that could be improved. Your letter needs work. And the third condition, it's obvious that you've taken your task seriously, and I'm going to do likewise by offering you straightforward, honest feedback. The comments in the following pages are critical, but I hope helpful. Remember, I wouldn't go to the trouble of giving you this feedback if I didn't think you're capable of meeting the higher standard mentioned. Your letter needs work. And this is the impact on future task orientation. So there's 0. So the unbuffered criticism. So this is the main body, Anglo-American students, but this is the minority group of students, and you can see the impact that it has on their willingness to engage in the same or a similar task on another opportunity. And remember that your letter needs work, but a lot of assurance about their general ability as a student. You're a good student, you just haven't done this task particularly well. And on whatever mark sheet we provide, that's usually not one of the criteria that we can tick. You're a good student, you just haven't done this task. Whereas in speaking, it's out in a few moments. We can say those kinds of things, and because Marie and I were asking, sorry, I've gone the wrong way. Marie and I were marking work of students that we knew. The classes they're a challenging size to remember all of the names, but that's part of my pedagogical beliefs, so I do so. They're 60 to 70 size classes, but we see them frequently enough that we do have a knowledge of all the individual students in the room. So when I'm marking, when I'm giving the feedback, I'm using the person's name, and I've got their work in front of me, and I'll, if you like, I'll play one of these to you later on. And I'm talking about their work directly to them. And the feedback that we've got, and I'll show you some of that, the feedback that we've got from the students about that exercise is that they really value it. Now, I've never got any feedback from anybody about giving them a written mark sheet, ever, unless they've come to my office and said, I'm disappointed in my mark because I worked really hard on this assignment. You might have heard similar things yourselves. So the effect of this exercise for us has been to assure the students that we're taking their work seriously, that we're judging it, that we're paying attention to it, and that the mark as a result is a valid judgment of what they put in front of us. So in the course, this might be a bit boring, I don't know why I put that slide in. I've probably told you this already. So we have about 225 students. We cover all curriculum areas. It's a core course. For core, read unpopular. No, not always, but compulsory. They can't opt out of it. In this particular course, we have kind of adolescent development, ed psych, teaching and learning theories, kinds of stuff that they might ordinarily veer away from. They have to. There's just Marie and myself, and there's very little turnaround time for the assignment. The particular assignment, so we want them to engage with some academic readings. We particularly want them to understand the Solo taxonomy and its application to the secondary school classroom. It dovetails very well, the Solo taxonomy dovetails very well with NCEA, not achieved, merit and excellence. It's very helpful in secondary schools. We want them to read some readings and annotate their responses, and we want them to, after so it's a little bit, it's quite intellectually quite challenging because they have to just be a student for a while and do the readings and respond to them, and then we teach them about Solo, and then they have to go back and look at the work they've done, so they kind of have to judge their own work a little bit. Having done that, we then want them to write a level 3 response, so an extended abstract response that draws connections between what they're reading and something else that they know about, another part of their learning, or a different kind of a scenario, and draws useful conclusions about that. And then we want to talk about the implications for the classroom. So it's quite it's short, but it's quite a complicated, quite a metacognitively demanding little piece of work. They have to be themselves and then be a judge of themselves and all that kind of stuff. And they hand it in written form. And the marking criteria that we use, so we need clear evidence that they've engaged with the texts of the readings that they've looked at. They need to show insight, which will relate to the key ideas in the text. We need to understand that they've seen the connection with their teaching practice, and we need them to show us through their annotations that they've understood and can apply the 3 different levels of the Solo taxonomy. So we have that. I have that sitting in front of me when I've got their work, and that's what I can't narrate, and you'll hear that in a little while. So we began this exercise via Moodle in 2015. The capacity it was built into Moodle, it was relatively seamless. And what was really interesting, we had no grade challenges at all. Nobody came to our office and said, "I don't think you've judged my work very fairly." Nobody. Now that's extraordinary in our program. We're dealing with graduate students, and as I say, they begin the conversation with, "I worked really hard." Yeah, of course, everybody did, but they kind of want a little bit more than they've got. None of that happened last year at all. So this year we're working in Canvas. It's still built in. There's a couple more steps involved, but it's still pretty seamless. Again, we've had no challenges or complaints. We've had some positive feedback, and I'll show you some of that in a little while. Oh yeah. That's the next line. Sorry, got ahead of myself. We've had affirmative feedback from students, and that's unusual, extraordinarily unusual in our program. I've been there since April 2002, and I've never had feedback about feedback, honestly, ever, really. So the benefits to us, quicker, is it any quicker? It probably isn't quicker than the first 5 of these that you do probably aren't quicker than the first 5 that you do with a written. But I don't know what you're like sitting with a pile of marking 50 deep. Numbers 35 to 40 really drag for me. Like they just another, like I just get slower and slower. Each of these remains at about the same intensity. I divide things up. I put them in alphabetical order because that makes work easier in Canvas. I divide them up into piles of 5 or 10, and I do a pile at a time. And I can do 10 in a row. If I'm trying to do 10 written ones, I find myself looking for coffee or somebody to talk to, or like something else to do to break the. It feels easier to do. I don't know that it's faster, but it feels more effective and more efficient. It's mentally demanding, but in a different kind of a way. And I just record them live. I've never re-recorded one. It's me giving feedback, talking to the student, and you'll hear all my ums and ahs in the one that I'll play for you. So the results are that we get positive feedback, and that's very rare. We've had nil comeback against our judgments, and we think that it kind of responds to I can't remember, you'll see it in a minute, because I eventually found the student evaluation for the course, whatever that question is, question 8 or whatever it is. It's in here, isn't it? I received helpful feedback on my learning progress. So this is the whole course. Oh, I haven't put. I've taken a screen. 201 students responded to this. We used to do it. I don't know how it's going to work out under the new regime, but we used to do it on paper, and we would choose a class towards the end of the course, so that you can see that. Where's the feedback one? This one here, 79.8. That's quite nice, isn't it? And overall satisfied with the quality of this course, 93.8. That's our record. And that's not only because we did this exercise, but it's got a fair bit to do with it, I think. Like, talking to the students, using their names, talking about their work, just seemed to engender a level of confidence and trust in our relationship with them and our judgment about their work. That had a really positive effect on the course overall, and how the course ran after that. And this is a compulsory course in the grad dip. They can't escape it. They might not choose it out of the calendar. They can't escape it. So we were quite chuffed with that really last year. So some of the comments. This is this year. Thanks for the feedback. Really appreciate it. Feel this style of feedback is awesome. That means good. As it makes me feel genuine, I can see this style will be useful for the classroom. Hi Marie, thank you for your feedback. I'm happy with my grade, still trying to wrap my head around everything, and I appreciate you. Oh yeah, so Howard Gardner's work was in there somewhere. Oh, this is a second language student. It's good to listen to your voice through the comment. I'm very satisfied with the marks. Sorry, I was confused. I thought I'd get a comment from but she took the trouble to email me. And this is somebody, so second language students often hover on the margins of our courses. They're a very valuable component in the teaching force of the future. We absolutely want them to come in, but sometimes because of the challenges of second language and written academic English, they don't always come towards the problem, and they don't always come looking for help. They sometimes hover in the margins a little bit. And this young woman did come to me, and anyway, she didn't get a fantastic mark. It wasn't that she got a really great mark, but she understood why she got the mark that she got. And in the context of my comment to her, I was able to talk about her strengths and areas for development. Thanks for the feedback, really appreciate it. Oh, did I do that one? I've gone the wrong way. Sorry. Oh no, I've done two of the same one. Never mind, little slip. That can be my mistake for 2016. So, Canvas. Now, if you're working in Canvas, you'll need the Chrome browser rather than Firefox. Firefox doesn't let Canvas talk very easily through Flash Player or something, so it took a little bit of a while to get through there. So that's the click-through process, but it's probably better if I just get it up on the screen and I'll go through it. Would that be all right? Good. You just check quietly amongst yourselves for a while I get Chrome up and out of here and see how I can see whether I can manage this or not. You might be familiar with this. So these are. My name's Brian, and this is my picture. So these are our courses. So in from here into assignments. So assignment, what was it? It was assignment 1 that we did. They're probably all marked though, aren't they? Never mind. So from assignment 1, test student, we can use test student. Why can't I see? So assignments, SpeedGrader. Welcome to SpeedGrader. So over here, and the very nice. Yes, it is. And over here, a range of icons. So what we're going to do is attach a little sound file. I'll just find test student, I suppose. Sorry, there'll be 225 of them nearly go flying by. Oh, was that it? No. Oh, no, Jessica's been done. And this is why I put them in alphabetical order. Oh, it's student, Brian, not test. There we go. Okay, so from here down to this the microphone, the media comment button. Tap on there. We don't want the whole live mess. We just want the microphone button. At this point, I sometimes get a message about my interaction with Flash Player, and I just say, please do that. It's not going to run for some reason. I don't know. Anyway, at this point, there would be a little red button in the middle of the screen that says click to record, and I just begin talking. And the built-in microphone picks it all up, and when I've finished, which usually takes me 2.5 to 3 minutes or so, when I've finished thinking of it, saying everything that I can think of, I click on the screen and it stops recording, and it immediately starts to play it back to me. Which just, I don't listen to it, God save me, but it verifies that the sound file has gone in, and I click save, and that's it. And the way it sounds, I'll just jump out of there. I'm sorry that won't work. I don't know why that would be, and I'll just play unknown and unnamed person. So this is a media comment. We won't play all of it because it's my voice, and we know how we feel about our own voices, don't we?
I'll just look at the rugby submitted for the first 612 assignment, the solo taxonomy assignment. So the first task was that you had to provide clear evidence of engagement with the text, and I think you're highlighting and annotating around the edges of the reading do that well. So I'm convinced that you've engaged with the reading. Mostly through highlights, some notes, highlights. Okay, so that's fine. But the second part, your solo level 3 responses, I think you probably could have given yourself a little more space in which to work.
That's teacher code for not long enough, isn't it? But that's exactly what he did. He went done, kind of hands on head, and that was okay. But he needed to know that actually, if he'd written a bit more, it would have been a better. And I won't play the whole thing. And I tell them the mark at the end, and they can also see the mark on their on whatever part of Canvas it is that they look at. And that's the process. That's not my first sighting of the assignment. Of course, I've been sitting there reading it. I've been looking at the criteria. I kind of map it all out in my head a little bit what I'm going to say. But as you can hear, there are pauses, and you can hear me ruffling the pages because I'm looking through the assignment. Now, what's really interesting to me in this process is that I kind of sketch out a couple of marks for the two different pieces on a piece of paper. What can happen in the process of talking my way through the work is that I don't give the marks that I thought I was going to give, because I'm kind of self-moderating in a way as I go through it. And sometimes I'm more likely to talk myself down a little bit from where it was actually. And thinking about okay. So, and because I'm thinking and doing all that kind of stuff at the same time. And once we get into a flow of that, so looking at the criteria, I need to see this, I need to see that, this kind of becomes a little bit of a pattern. It acts as a mental template for the kinds of things we're going to say. But after that, I'm engaging live with the work that's in front of me, and I'm judging it and letting the student know what I thought of it, where their strengths were, how they might have done it differently. Which like, it's not a miracle, you know, it's not the silver bullet, but it's different. And what's interesting for us is the different impact it's having on our student body. They're responding differently to it than when they come and pick up an assignment and read the grade. And I think they all listen to it. I don't know, hand on heart, I don't know that they all read all the way through a written grade mark sheet. I don't know that that's true. I think they look at the mark and maybe then they look at some more, but I don't know that they engage with it. But having heard 3 or 3.5 minutes of me, I look at the comments there, it's, I wonder what he said. And so they listen to it, they get all of the feedback. I can't swear that every student listens to all of it, but my suspicion is that they do. And that's one of the significant differences, I think, that actually it causes them to engage with the feedback. So it validates our work, and I think it kind of helps put them in the frame of mind where they are, they're not of a fixed mindset, they're of a growth mindset. Okay, so if I were to do a similar assignment, I need to do this more, I need to do that more. So it's useful ongoing feedback about their work for the rest of the program. And I think I got to all the way to the end of the PowerPoint. I won't go and have a look because I will be bored of it. So that's it, that's what we do. It works. Once we figured out that Firefox was getting in the way, and we switched to Chrome as a browser, everything worked seamlessly. I'm sorry it couldn't work here today, I don't know why that is. It might even be that the assignment is closed off or something. Maybe I can't do it anymore, I'm not sure. But the little media player thing, that works. Sometimes it asks you to verify that yes, it's okay to talk to Flash Player at the moment. That's a click and then it goes through. Click to record, click to stop, click to save, onto the next student's piece of work. And as I say, in time invested overall, can't really quantify it, but it feels like it's quicker and it feels like it's more effective and it feels like less of a drudge. And actually I feel like I'm bringing I'm bringing a better game to that marking set, because it's because if I go out and get a cup of coffee halfway through, they're going to hear it. You know, like I have to apply my mind to it while I'm doing it. So I do it in bursts of 5 or 10 assignments, have a bit of a break. Sometimes I can roll through more than that, but it feels like it validates my work. It feels like it validates the students' work. It feels better all round. Untested, anecdotal evidence, no such thing. But that's my story.